Started. Thank you. Town Hall Building Committee full meeting, February 23rd, 2023. It's about 6:08 p.m. We'll do the roll call. Say your first name, please say your full name and that you're here. Wayne?
Wayne Sawchuk here.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Coffey here.
Mark?
Mark Cameron here.
Josiah?
You're on mute.
Sorry, Josiah Stevenson here.
Thank you. Phil Lear here. Thank you. Right, tonight we're going to go over the almighty numbers. John, you want to jump right into this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. So just so you're all aware, we had received kind of a first pass of the estimate about a week ago, and we had some questions. Johnson Roberts had some questions. We had a lengthy meeting with Commodore where I tried to identify opportunities for value engineering. Opportunities for value engineering that we felt we could get done in time to get into the drawings so that we could still bid the project for this town meeting. There were some other items that were discussed, could you save some money as an example by changing structure and all of that. And again, things that really weren't practical, given the time frame that we're operating under, because we're talking about going to bid here, starting the process, just inside of a couple of weeks, just outside of a couple of weeks, I should say. So what I'm going to do tonight is I want to show you kind of an Excel version of what we received. Happy to send, and again, we only got the final versions of it about 26 hours ago. So I will send those estimates out to everybody after this, but I kind of boiled them down and put them on a summary spreadsheet. I want to show you those items. Then I'm going to show you how it compares to the overall project budget that we have been tracking on prior, and then show you kind of the breakdown of where we see this going for CPC funds for the ask to them. Now, the only thing is that number, I haven't had time to finish that, but at least have a ballpark of where that's going. So I'm going to share my screen, and okay, so just quickly to show you what we received. Again, we received a 39-page estimate, for the new building. We received an add-on for renovation only, which I will discuss when we get after we get through it, and also a list of value engineering items. So I've taken this information and kind of pulled it forward onto this Excel spreadsheet. So kind of take you through it. So the estimate that we received from Commodore for the building was $17.8 million. That was broken down into hard costs of $4.7 million for the existing town hall, the new addition of $7,161,000 for the new addition, and site work of 2.3 for a total of 14.2 million. On top of that, you have what are, I'm calling the markups, but it's basically the general conditions, general requirements, insurance, bond, all of the other costs that you have to build into this to run and manage the project. 17.8 million. So wait a minute, those GCs and GRs and markups and all of that need to be distributed across those three categories of cost. Okay, and it's basically a straight line ratio. So we take the $3.5 million in markup and we apply it across the existing town hall hard costs, the new addition hard costs, and the site work hard costs. Okay, to get us to the 17.8 again, but basically now we've just got three numbers to deal with: old, new, and site. Okay, everybody clear with that before I move on? Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to keep going. The next thing we talked about was some value engineering items. And those value engineering items are, when we talked to the group, we said, what is the things that are there, that changes that could be made right off the bat that could save some money? Not, not things that we're going to kill each other over, 5 years from now when you say, why did you convince me to change the solid surface countertops to veneer to save $5,000, and then they peel in 5 years, and you're like, why did we do that? So kind of like, what are the kind of the bigger items that we can deal with that don't require really much of a design change right now, and why that, I'll talk about that in a minute. Or actually, I'll turn it over to Phil to talk about that in a couple of minutes, because there are some things that they're still working through that we think provide additional opportunities for savings, but we don't have that information yet. That's stuff that's being developed between now and when the drawings are ready for bid. So the 4 items that came up, 3 were deducts, 1 was an add. Okay. 1 was deleting the granite veneer around the building, a lot of stone facing around the perimeter of the project, a lot of granite facing. So to take that out of the project, there's obviously a cost for labor and materials that you're saving for the granite, but also the foundation itself was made beefier in the design to be able to, support that granite. So by taking the granite out of the project, you're actually, skinnying up the foundation a little bit, and don't think too skinny, just it had a little bit of a concrete shelf that was being built into it to hold that granite facing. Taking all that out, and that's just $370,000 in savings. The running wood door trim, Phil, I'll let you talk about that briefly for a second. Can you just talk about which items specifically we were removing for that?
So basically, what we're showing in the offices and in the meeting rooms and a lot of the other spaces in the new addition, and then upstairs in the renovated areas, the doors and door frames that go into all those offices and so forth, we're showing as wood door frames with wood trim on basically on the inside and the outside. If we substitute the wood frames for a hollow metal door frame, it's a good, durable, long-lasting product. And then we could eliminate the wood trim on the insides of those rooms and just have it on the outsides of the rooms. So we could save on the cost of the door frame, and we could save on basically on half of that trim on the inside of the building. So that's what that reduction represents. Folks coming into the building, you'd be looking at a wood door, a stained wood door and stained wood trim around it. And then there'd be some, a small amount of painted metal. Those of you who can't see, I'm kind of holding up about 2 or 3 inches of exposed metal that runs around on 3 sides of the frame that we could paint. And we've done similar details in other projects in the past, and it looks nice. And for this kind of a savings, it seems like it's well worth it to do it.
Okay, thanks, Phil. And then the last item that was easy pickings, Commodore picked up on that the plans called for an 18-inch gravel base within the footprint of the existing parking lot, and questioned why would we need to dig up a parking lot just to put more parking lot base down. So they suggested going from 18 to 6. I know GGD responded back, Phil, and said that 12 would be okay. So we're still going to have to reconcile this number, because this is to go, to get rid of essentially 12 inches of fill. We may only be able to get rid of 6, but again, for the sake of this discussion, I wanted to show you the information as provided. I didn't want to take a stab at it, changing it, just so it matches what they gave us.
Right,
And
the
then
material
one-
in the parking lot right now, by the way, is all gravel. It's 4 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet down of the best gravel you could ever have under a parking lot. So there should be, something that is almost no cost to it.
Yeah, one of the other options that we talked about with GGD, this is Phil, is to, if Commodore is going to do some on-site testing and investigations, and if they can determine the depth of that gravel, the quality of that gravel under the parking lot, it's possible that we might be able to just regrind, if it's in good shape, we might be able to regrind the parking lot where it is, and that may be even more of the savings. But it's one of those things, we need more information before we can nail that down. But because this is CM at risk, if we find that out later, they'll only charge you for the additional work they need to do.
Right. And they're going to get an enormous amount of gravel when they go and put the filtration unit in for the drainage. So that's going to be a plus too. They should be doing a test where that's going on so they could prove that too.
100%, 100%. And then the last, it's VE, but it's really not VE because we're talking about, adding this, and this is something everybody talked about, adding the warming kitchen. So it was, they included a number of 29,000 for that because again, that warming kitchen isn't in the plans per se. So the drawings are at 95% right now. There was a sketch that Natalie issued, a couple of sketches, so they put some numbers to that. So that's the value engineering for right now. Does anybody have any questions on that? Oh, Mark's raising his hand.
So just for those listening in that may not be aware of what the warming kitchen is it was an ad in the existing concessions area of the old town hall that would be utilized as a catering kitchen to support any events that would be hosted or held in the in the auditorium space.
Thanks, Mark. And then the last item, this is based on an ask from the select board the last time we presented about people wanting to know what would the renovation only number be. And again, this is listed as a rough order of magnitude because as Mark very aptly stated at the last select board meeting is this isn't the scope of this project. Okay, we don't know what a complete renovation would be of the existing addition. We do have a good idea of what the renovation number is for the historic portion of the building because that's the kind of the work that we're doing. So basically I asked Commodore to look at, kind of that same level of renovation in the existing building. But again, so it really is a rough order of magnitude. So same thing, basically they kept the town hall number from above. They gave us a renovated addition number. Site work, they didn't know what to put for site work because again, not designed yet, but site work hard costs for the whole new project are 2.3 million. I want around a third, just to carry a little more than a third to carry something for site work. Again, that number could be half of that. It could be 50% more, depending on what that project would be. But again, just trying to say that there would be something done there. Gave the total, used the same markup factor for the general conditions on the project, which then made this 13 million break up into these three sections: existing town hall, renovated addition, and site work. Okay, which gives us a renovation only number, again, before soft costs and contingencies and all the other stuff, a hard cost number of 13 million compared to a hard cost number of the current project of 17.8. Again, the other, it's less square footage. You're gaining square footage in the new building. You're gaining better program space. There's a list of other things, but again, someone asked for this data point. We got it for them. We'll be able to forward it to them in the packet for the select board meeting.
Usually renovated numbers don't include structural and envelope, but this needs structure and envelope. Does that cover it? That 48?
So it's a really good question, Josiah. They applied a square foot price to this. Does it deal with all of the code upgrades, the required issues? We talked about that, but again, to what level? That's why I think, maybe we talk to them and this is more of a range. This is an awfully specific number for an undefined scope. So yeah. I think we should still work on this a little bit more before we give it, but it's a very good question. I would tell you probably yes and no, right? There's probably something in there for it, but is it exactly what the building needs? Again, Phil didn't study that, in that half of the building.
Right.
Okay.
And also I'm sorry, just one more thing.
No, go ahead.
And to do this renovation would take more time, and there's escalation in that too, and it would happen later, right? Like a year later.
Absolutely great point. And as you'll see when I flip the page, you'll also be paying for design again, because you can't just look at it blind as just the Reno project. It's the Reno project plus everything you've spent to date on the new project. Okay, so this, if you recall, this is the very detailed budget sheet that we've used before. I'm going to just gray out this section lightly so that I don't want you looking too much at this, but this is kind of how we got here originally. Or if you recall, there was a number that was done in November of 21. We did an update in March of 22 and another update in July of 22. And just kept, and then for the July of 22, we escalated those numbers up for other presentations with the town. Okay, and as you can see here, I broke the numbers into the same. We've got the old town hall, we've got the new town hall, we've got the site work. Okay, so these are all everything up here we talked about on the prior page. Okay, and again, I don't want to do this for right now. I'm gonna hide that Reno for right now, because again, that's just a data point. So there's the 17,808 for the prior page. Well, what are some of the other things that we're going to add to the project? Obviously, we're going to carry a construction contingency for hard costs. Basically it works out to about 8%, because in our experience, you carry 5% for new and 10% for old. So for old building renovation. So kind of a hybrid, because we got a mix between the two. So right now we've got roughly an 8% number on the construction hard costs. Now we go into basically soft costs. We've got some updated numbers from Johnson Roberts, again, because these numbers are 2+ years old. Some additional fees for CA after talking to their consultants. And again, Johnson Roberts was hired when this was a $10 or $11 million project, and now it's 17. So there's been a lot of time and a lot of iterations. So there was some money for additional CA there. Again, then we've got the OPM costs. Our costs escalated slightly over a couple of years, but we kept keeping the duration and level of effort static. We've got hazmat costs for hazmat survey and design, as well as abatement monitoring in the building. And then we have some other soft costs here that you can see. The ones that have changed are in blue. Given the time that's passed, we included some additional $10,000 more for Chapter 17 required testing. That's third-party testing that's required by the building code, whether that has to be for compaction outside when you're doing earthwork, whether it's other sorts of concrete testing to confirm compressive strength tests. Again, this is something that the OPM, as your OPM, we will watch this budget for you. You only pay for what you use, and whatever's not used at the end, we give it back. But given the size and scope of the project, we think 40,000 is a good number. Utility back charges are for any costs that our utility friends may charge us for the building. Usually there's always, the electric utility is always good for a surprise. Oh, you need to put this new enclosure in around the transformer, or it needs to be buried, or those kind of things. And those are back charges that would come from the utility, and that's what this is for. Previously, we had carried IT, phone data, internet, cable kind of outside of the contractor's scope, but Commodore asked, and we said, yep, given what's going on in the market, you give us a price for what you're seeing out there today to actually have them carry the installation. Not a decision we need to make just yet. We could still pull this out, and the owner could use their vendors directly. But as you can see, we had been carrying 120,000, and they felt the number was closer to 180 for that scope of work to do that 100%. The other increase was security. There had been some discussions. Originally, the project had one card reader in it. There's been some discussions with the folks at Town Hall about adding a number of other card readers, some different layers of security. I think 6 or 7 additional card readers in the building. All those card readers are wired. The door frames have to be ordered special so that they work with the card readers. So that stuff that's in here. And that number went from 50 to 128. Soft costs, again, the rest of the soft costs stayed the same. Right now, we are still carrying $200,000 for temp facilities. And I'll let we'll touch base on that one separately after. You know, soft costs add up. We carry a soft cost contingency. We're carrying 15% contingency for that. We could probably take that down to 10, but I wouldn't go any lower because that, you know, again, that covers us if the utilities come in a little bit higher or any of the, you know, we have pricing increases for furniture that, you know, we certainly saw through COVID for steel office furniture and those sorts of things. But again, contingency money is not money that is given to anybody. It's held to the side. We don't use it. It goes back to the town. Soft cost total 3.4 million, brings the total project budget to 22.6. If you take away the 2 appropriations of 1.2 million and then 200,000 that was appropriated for CM at risk at the most recent town meeting that this group presented to, puts us to 21,283 before value engineering. Okay. I'm going to hold off on talking about the CPC grant for a second. And basically what we're going to do is then, let's see, we've got, go ahead and change these numbers. Give me just a second. I'm going to stop share for 1 second and see if anybody has any questions, just like there's a cell error. I just want to make sure I grab here. Any questions, anybody? It's kind of a whole lot of information. I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with it.
There are several people in attendance, so if anyone has any questions, if you raise your hand, be more than happy to have you talk and participate.
John, will we be able to see what trades maybe went up or down, or I'm sure there weren't many that went down, but see the areas in terms of trades that went up in comparison to last time?
You know, Mark, we didn't do the side-by-side comparison for
Okay.
Really, we've been working this. Sorry, guys, I put myself into a panic here. I had taken away the 1.4 million of appropriations, so the subtotals didn't match because one was below, one was above. Just let me go back to this for a second. So we're at 22,683. If we took all of the VE, okay.
We don't see the screen.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mark. $22,683. Again, that's all. Again, this is just the summary of the items from up above. Again, the deduct for the appropriation is down here. I'm showing it after we do the deduct for the value engineering. If we take the 4 value engineering items, it brings us from 22,683 to 22,085. We take away the 1.4 million already appropriated. It puts us at 20,685 before any discussion with CPC. I know folks have been asking, okay, so what would that number be for CPC? That's where I'm going next. So what I'm showing here, this information over here is what was presented last time to the select board. Okay, so I just for reference. So again, this information is from the prior page. We just went over it, but I want to show you, well, how do we get a number for CPC? Well, CPC is what we told Commodore to do is to give us a breakdown, and we have the backup for this. Give us a breakdown for all of the work that is on the historical side of the building, and for items that are shared services, all new electrical, all new HVAC, all new plumbing, break it down by square footage. If there's 40% of the square footage in the old building and 60% in the new, take 40% of that electrical cost and put it with the old. We're not going to count fixtures and wire, because if the panels are in the other building, the panels serve, panels serve both. Similarly, if we're housing a big air handling unit in the existing building, well, and it serves the new building, we shouldn't be lumping that in entirely with the old building, even though it sits there, because it's providing heating and air conditioning to the other side. So we did the systems of the building by square footage. So in doing so, again, this is the $5 million number that we saw for the estimate on the prior page. That $5 million number is 33% of the $17.8 million construction cost. Now, so that's what I'm, as of right now, the renovation portion of the historical building is 5.9 million. The only thing I haven't gone through and added, CPC has very specific requirements about what they will and will not cover when it comes to site work, when it comes to landscaping. So as an example, I know that, the last time I looked, they will cover as part of a grant, the utility costs to get utilities to the building. That's about the only site works. If you got to dig a hole to put a water line in, or put a fire protection line in, we would look to try to apportion those costs by square footage again, and add those to this total. We're just not quite there yet. Didn't have time to get to that level of detail. But for right now, let's assume that all that is in there. 5.9 million, 33% of the hard costs. And then what we are doing is applying that 33% to the soft cost items that are above. So 393,000 for soft costs, 278,000 for OPM, 331 for design, adding to the 5.9 million. That's a total renovation portion of the cost of 6.9 million that we would submit to CPC and see what they would be willing to cover. Clearly, we'll be ready to have a more in-depth, discussion with them. We'll be able to, we have the estimates, we have the we have the breakdowns, just not in a form today that's ready to go. Steve and I will be working on first the presentation to the select board over the next couple of days to make sure that packet is done, and then have one for CPC. So I'm going to stop here and see if there are any questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Phil to talk a little bit about design, about the things that you've already heard some of, but some other things that he's still working on that we think could result in additional savings for the project. And just to confirm the design changes that came out of that summit that we had in the great room of the old town hall a few weeks ago. So any questions?
So John, there is a question.
Yep.
Mike Dick from the Capital Budget Committee. Is it possible to go back and exclude some new programs designed into the building that don't exist in the current building, i.e. TV studio, hall rental infrastructure? Those are just some examples.
Exclude how, Michelle?
Probably exclude from the design is what I'm assuming. But Mike, if you'd like to ask the questions live,
Yeah, I mean,
happy to.
Right now, Michelle, we are just straight up square footage. Like, we could certainly, of course, every space, I'm doing it just by cost right now. You could certainly go in and pull a space out square footage wise if there was concern that it, should or shouldn't be in there. Yeah, I mean, we could certainly do that. I would just want to confirm that with, Commodore, because I'm dealing with kind of PDF printouts from them, not a working item that I can go in and manipulate and toggle. But we could certainly, if there's a question about whether, a 400 square foot studio should be covered, yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's something that we could certainly, find the cost, because we have square foot pricing,
Yeah.
multiply it, deduct it, apply the deduct for those soft costs, and pull that stuff out.
Sure. I'd also like to add, as far as the hall rental infrastructure, that was actually something that the select board charged this committee with trying to figure out if we could use this as a revenue generator or additional community space. So I believe that's the impetus for having this in there.
You mean like the warming kitchen, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah,
That stuff, yeah, that stuff we can easily pull that out for the presentation for sure. And again, we're doing this based on this is all the estimate phase, right? Ultimately, a few weeks from now, we're going to hope to, we're going to have an actual bid in place. So at that point, we'll be able to, give the breakdowns, the real-time breakdowns of what these things are coming out to, after the bids are done. I'm going to stop the share right now. And Phil, do you want to go through your stuff right now? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I had sent a list.
Oh, you want me to put that list up?
I have that list as part of my slides.
Oh, great. Okay, great.
And so I will just jump in there. I will just say that there's a lot of things on there. It's kind of my cheat sheet from the last time we met, and includes a couple of other things that were kind of outstanding. It's kind of a list of the kind of recent changes we talked about, kind of what their status is at this point. Some of them have drawings to help me illustrate what I'm doing. There's a lot on here, so I'm going to try to move through it pretty quickly. And then, because I think some of them are kind of no-brainers. And then, if you all don't mind, and then if there's any questions on some of them, we can kind of run back through and pick up on those. If that sounds all right. Gonna try to. Can folks see that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So this is the list that I put together. I don't expect you to read it all. These are all repeated on the slides. I made a PDF of this and I can post it on Google and send you the link, and then whoever wants to look at this can download it and spend a little bit more time with it if you want. But basically, I wanted to update you all on kind of the things that we talked about and the status, the way we understand them right now. The first is to reroute the water and fire protection lines to the front of the building. Right now, shown in yellow, they wrap around the back of the building, and the suggestion was made that if we came in the front of the building, we could reduce the overall length of the piping and so forth. What that means is, and we're planning on doing that. What it really means is that we needed to swap the mechanical room and the MDF or server room in the basement. They're basically the same size rooms, and so I don't think it makes a big difference. But it does make inside, but it does make a big difference outside with the amount of work that we need to do. And so we think that is going to work, and that is underway. The second one was, as John mentioned, this changing the existing concessions to a warming kitchen. There's a little blow up you can see over here on the right. We've changed that on our drawings so far. Our drawings have been updated, and we've sent them off to our engineers so that they can do their part. So there'll be some additional electrical that happens in here, plumbing for this sink and so forth. And so the room has got a little bit larger than it was before. It basically extends back to the existing wall where the doors are. So it incorporates this little corridor that accesses this exterior door, and this door basically just steps out of we weren't using this as an exit door anyway. And this door basically will provide a way for the folks that are working in here, potentially, if they're using it to deliver foods and so forth, warm things up to service in here, they could sneak in and out this way if they needed to. But we've got a sink in there, and we've moved the sink away from the windows. And we've got a spot for a warming cabinet and an under-counter refrigerator. If you wanted to do a full-size refrigerator, you certainly could put it up against this wall here, and we'll have outlets and so forth in that room. So basically that's underway. Our engineers are working on their portion of it. This one is a little trickier. I'll try to walk you through it. The engineers are working on this one right now. The kind of status is these bullet points over in here. The issues here are we've got 3 regular parallel parking spaces in the street right now. The idea is to turn those 3 parking spaces into 2 handicapped accessible spaces. They're about the same length, maybe a little bit longer. They need additional width so that you can get out of your car safely. and then transfer into a wheelchair or take out your walker without the door hanging out in the middle of traffic. For folks that aren't as able-bodied and don't move around as quickly, we just need some additional space. So the other thing with handicap accessible parking is all needs to be very level. So there's not a lot of grade change that we can pick up in here. And so we're kind of driven by what's in the street. So that puts us at about elevation 95 1/3 feet. And the landing outside the doorway here is at 98.48 feet, about 98.5 feet. And that's a difference of a little bit over 3 feet in vertical distance. And we need to make up that distance to where we are right now in about 56 feet. And when we run that calculation, we're a little bit too steep. You see those numbers down in here. We need to get out to 62.5 linear feet of sidewalk so that we could keep this as a sidewalk, 1 to 20. 5% and 1 to 20 are the same thing. That's in order to comply with the handicap code. If it's any steeper than that, it needs to be a full ramp with landings and railings and additional walls and so forth. We were trying to avoid that. We think it would probably detract from the handsome looks on the of the original building, more so than what we're doing right now. Extending this out is obviously going to impact this sidewalk here running up to the new main entrance on the side. It reduces that length. Right now, that length runs all the way down to here, and we're taking a little bit of that space out. Actually, probably this, we could probably make work because it's serpentine. We could probably gain up a little bit of space. So it's a maybe right now. GGD is still working on this drawing. But we're kind of running out of time. If we're going to do this, we need to do it. And so I guess the question for the committee is, if it does mean ramps and landings and additional retaining walls and more rails to go along with it, do you still want to do it, or would you only be interested in making this change if we can do it, and it's possible that we could do it without doing ramps, but keeping sidewalks? And so we can come back to that one, but this is one that we'd like to get your opinion on so that we know if it comes up, we don't need to come back to you. If they tell us we can't do it without going to ramps and rails and landings and so forth, then
Phil, let's run through them all and then go back on any ones people want to see. I think that'll at least the ones that are no brainers, we can just cross off the list.
Great. Okay. So this next one is the potential generator changes. There was a couple of different things that come up about the generator. The question really is whether or not this 300 kilowatt generator, where it's located in the rear part of the parking lot, whether it could get closer to the building to reduce the length of the runs. One of the reasons we moved it back here is that there's a house back here. There's a couple of houses back here. And one of the suggestions is, could we fit it between the parking lot and the storage building? Given the size of it, GGD says that we can't fit it because there's not enough clearance around it for service and for the amount of air that they need and to get everything else in there that they need to get in there. We may be able to fit it next to the shed behind these bushes. And I don't know if it makes a big difference in terms of how close it is to this house. It's maybe a little bit closer.
Folks, just for folks' information, this was a suggestion by Commodore. You know, we said come to the table with cost savings ideas, and obviously the issue here is, you know, the size of the feeder that comes out of the generator. You know, it's pretty hefty. It's a lot of copper because it's, you know, it's obviously powering your building. So that's what this is. This is it as a result of that discussion, and it was. Commodore said, hey, can we fit it between the storage building and the parking spaces? Sounds like the answer is no. So that's where this discussion came from.
We also asked, because there was a question about whether they over-designed the generator, and they have told us they have not over-designed the generator. It's designed to meet the load that they were asked to do, which is the entire building. So basically the building will work as intended with this generator. If your power goes out, it will be 100% operational based on the request that I understand came from the select board. So that's what we're doing at this point. The next size down is 250 kilowatts. The GGD didn't think that there was a substantial cost savings in that, given that everything else that you needed to do inside the building. Whether or not 250 250, what it sounds like from their email, wouldn't give you everything that you need. They needed the 300 kilowatts. They said it's not over designed. So if we went down a size, it wouldn't make a big difference in terms of the cost. That hasn't been confirmed by Commodore, but they would have to remove some things from the emergency generator and redesign the electrical and emergency electrical systems in order to accommodate that. So that's the response we get from them. Swapping the TV studio and the staff break room. We have done that. That's been changed on our plans. The TV studio used to be adjacent to the control studio with a door in between. And the staff break room was here. So we've swapped these. It's not so bad of a change on our drawings. That's done. There's a couple of things that we'll need to change in on our interior elevations. The bigger change happens in electrical and plumbing. We've got to make sure that we get this sink in here, and we need to change a couple of our documents in order to coordinate that. But the plans have been changed at this point. We asked at the last meeting if there was a way that we could modify the plans to add an assistant town manager, and we've done that. We basically, you may recall the town manager's office kind of ran along the back of this space, and so we've pushed the wall out a little bit. That made the outer office space a little smaller. There's 2 people in there right now. We think pretty much everything is still going to fit. You may be a little bit short on additional extra space for things like file cabinets. So when we get to the furnishing stage, we may be looking at taller file cabinets than you would have normally used in a space like this. But we've fitted that assistant town manager space in here, and we've got the town manager closer to the meeting room so that they could get easy access for things like getting back and forth to the office for executive sessions and other things like that. Increased auditorium lighting. There's a couple of different things that we talked about. In blue here are the existing light fixtures. The room right now has a total of 4 light fixtures that are kind of octagonal shaped. They're a little bit Art Deco looking, which kind of lines up with when they were put in. The renovation of the main hall here was in 1928, according to what we've read. Some of you will probably know that the auditorium used to be on the upper floor, and there's still signs of that space that show up in the old mezzanine and so forth. But it was moved down to the lower floor when the building was renovated in 1928, and the trusses were added to support the walls above. And you can see little peaks of those trusses kind of cutting into doorways and so forth upstairs that help support that floor. So the idea there is, rather than taking the 4 fixtures that are in there, plus an additional 4 fixtures that exist in the lower ceiling section at the back of the room and out in the hallway, and refitting them and giving you a total of 8, with additional lights in it, with brighter lighting in them, that we could change those over to some kind of a chandelier. Assuming that the original building is in 1857, is more of a Victorian era, I would have expected more of a gaslight looking type fixture. It might have even been a little more gaudy with crystals on it and everything. I don't really know, unless anybody has a photograph of that old hall. I haven't found anything like that, but I don't think that anybody needs the maintenance of crystals or the cost. So we're suggesting something kind of simple that kind of recalls a Victorian sort of gaslight looking thing. This one is actually shown at a distressed metal. It's the best photo I found. There are different types of glass, and I'll show you that. And there's a bunch of different finishes, and there are different options as well. The other thing we could also do is, in addition to the chandeliers, or if you were interested instead of the chandeliers, we could keep these more Art Deco fixtures, is to add downlights where we're showing the red dots here on the reflected ceiling plan. We found a photograph of Provincetown Town Hall renovation, and if you look carefully, you can see that even though this is a nice old historic room, they've added some downlights. The reason I wanted to put that photograph in is because downlights are pretty low profile, and they don't look too bad even in an older building, and so I think we could probably get away with it. And we'd be tucking them in between these acoustical panels, and so they'd have a little bit of cover as well. Those panels stick down just a little bit. And then I have one more slide to show you the different glass options. And one of the nice things is that you don't really need to pick the glass options right now. And then there's a couple of different style variations, a little bit more fancy on the metal work here, or a little simpler form. They're basically variations of the same thing. And again, they come in a variety of metal finishes, including bronze, which is, I think, one person suggested. And then they have kind of an heirloom brass and a distressed brass. So, and we could get physical samples of those things during the submittal phase to show those to you if anybody's interested. But again, this is one of those things that we need the yay or nay on so that we can get it onto the documents. John mentioned this one, and we talked to GGD, and we've went over this one before. The idea here is that there's your pavement, and the new base was shown on GGD's drawing is 18 inches deep. They're saying that based on what they know right now, they could easily reduce it to 12. It doesn't need to be 18 inches, so that was a good catch. But depending on what's under that existing parking lot, they said that they agreed that they might even be able to just regrind what's there and use that as a base, which would save you more money because you wouldn't need to excavate down all that much other than to change the grade, and you could reuse that material and move it around. So you'd be doing a lot less excavation and removal and replacement if that is possible. So we need a little bit of additional information and nail that one down. These 5 items, I don't have drawings or illustrations to go with, and so I've taken them out of order a little bit, but basically John talked about eliminating the granite facing on the foundations. That's kind of a no-brainer. We've done that. The details will stay there, and they've priced it as an alternate, and if everything comes in great and you want to go ahead with it, we'll have the number for that. We'll also have the number for not doing it. Changing the doors and the locks to the keyless entry, we are making the changes to the doors, frames, and hardware. The electrical change is basically box and conduit, the way it is for all of your other electronics, assuming that the electronics themselves will be added at a later date, and we'll have everything there with pull strings so that stuff can be pulled in, just like security and so forth. I don't know whether or not this was one of those things that Commodore gave you a price on as part of the security system or not, John. I assume.
Yeah, it was Phil, so that's good.
Okay.
So it's under
Great.
security, yeah, the security number went up, over doubled. So
Great. Okay. Restore the window at the stage. This is the one window that's at the back of the stage that was covered up when the existing addition was put on. We're taking that addition down, and that elevation is going to be exposed. We originally just called for that to be clapboarded over, but we have changed it so we're doing a restoration of that window, and that's shown in the drawings now. Adding clutch type window treatments to all the windows. We actually had that in the specifications, and it wasn't included in Commodore's GMP estimate, but it is now. So the numbers that you saw tonight includes this on all the windows. Removing the glass from all the offices with open counters. We've done that. I don't know if that is specifically included in Commodore's numbers or not. I didn't know how to find it exactly. But the thing we wanted to point out is that you have a nighttime kind of closure for the rest of the building. But if you wanted to leave the corridors, for example, open in the addition, you don't have security in each of the departments now. Somebody could hop over the counter, in other words, even if the door is locked, if we take the glass out. I just want folks to be aware of the implications. I think we talked about it when we all met, but I know we went over a lot of things, and I just wanted to point that out to you all. The transformer, we asked GGD about moving the existing transformer to the existing location. The existing location is actually in the parking area right now, kind of half in and half out. And the space that we have in that area to potentially move the new transformer over into this area is really taken up with walkways and mechanical equipment. We don't really have enough room to get the transformer much closer to the building. The idea, I think, was to reduce the length of the secondaries and save a little bit of cost. We're recommending we leave it the way it is. We just don't think we can realize those costs in an effective manner. Moving the mechanical equipment further away from the building is much harder because of the refrigerant lines and so forth, and that would just make that it wouldn't be any savings, in other words. Extending the public sidewalk. this is basically the idea here is I think that if anybody was parked at the back and they wanted to go out to the street, across the street to the common, to have a sidewalk that continues along this part of the driveway to take you out to the public way so that you didn't have to walk across the grass or in the driveway. And we've asked GGD to make that change, and that is underway. There was a suggestion to remove these little corners on the parking lot. And the idea there being is that where these parking spaces that abut these areas would end, rather than having the granite curbing and so forth, we'd extend the pavement in there. And then we would just stripe these areas so that you could pile your snow there. And it would save a little bit on your curbing and add a little bit on the bituminous. So there's a couple of things there. If we move the generator, we can realize this one. If we don't, then we kind of need that spot for the generator. But we can certainly change this one. The other thing that GGD is reviewing is that we'll make a modest change into the amount of non-permeable on the site. And we just need to make sure that that change doesn't have an impact on the stormwater management system that would make this less cost effective. And so they're confirming that for us, but I don't have the answer to that yet. But if we can do it and it saves money, I think it's easy to do. And if this generator moves, then this one could be done as well as that one. And then the last couple of slides here is just a copy of the most updated plans in case we needed to refer to them. And that's the end of my slides.
Okay, so Phil, sounds like we need to go back for the lights, and we need
Yep.
to go back for the side handicap parking spots.
Yes.
So just for my own edification, so if you're going to try to achieve the 62-foot run so that you can maintain the slope,
Yes.
can you with a marker show what does that do to the walkway that we're seeing on the page right there? Because obviously the radius would have to, that walkway wouldn't start turning sooner, or what's the impact of that?
Let's see if I can. I don't see drawing tools specifically here, so I'll try to use my own. So I think if we end up doing this, the sidewalk probably at a minimum needs to turn at 90 degrees so that we can pick up a little bit more length. They may suggest connecting these two, but I think the grades in this area are probably steep enough that they would probably recommend against that. But a move like that, even though it's unnatural to walk on, may give you a little bit of additional length that you need. If you go onto the grading drawing, the 97 line is kind of right in there. And then if you think about another 20 feet down, and we're trying to, in length, and then we're trying to get down to 95 and a third, we need to get another 20 feet plus another, 70% of 20 feet. So that's another 14. So we might be able to make it, or we may have to do something like put a bend or something in this walkway so that we can pick up a little bit more room. I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but we're trying to save a couple of trees that we have here on site. And so we're trying to stay away from those. And if we can make it work without going to ramps and rails, I think it makes sense and it answers the question and it does what you need it to do.
So let me ask you a question. So just so folks understand, if we have to go to rails, is it rails on both sides of the sidewalk or is it on one side?
It's both sides. Right now we have a guide rail here on one side of and it doesn't need to be, it's not a guardrail. It's just for people to hold on to and to keep them from falling off this wall in the dark. If we go to ramps, we need 2 sets of rails and potentially guards on both sides.
Can you just show everybody? So basically you need them on either side of the dashed arrow that
Yes.
whole walkway.
Yes, at 2'10" and down at, what is it, 19 inches or something.
Okay.
And then the posts that go
So
along with
if you-
that. And then it just gets more complicated, and we're gonna need to do switchback. You know, we may end up with some kind of a switchback in here in order to accommodate that.
Make the rest of the height.
Right? It's just not, this is not gonna be a nice looking thing that sits in the front lawn, that's all.
Can I just ask, if you park where you had it shown and go into the new building?
Yep.
It seems like the travel distance won't be that much more than if you do all this stuff and go through uncomfortable steeper ramps and stuff like that.
So
It maybe even be less travel distance.
is the question, if you went, there's so many lines on here now, if you went in this way?
No. Right now, if I recall, I apologize, but I can't draw any, I don't. The old spots were back behind the new building, right? To
Those
the
are gonna
right,
stay,
off
those
the
will stay
page.
there, yes.
Yeah, but if you go from there into the new building and through the lobby into the old town hall space, that is
Yes.
a certain travel distance that's not that much more than all this stuff and going up steeper ramps and I think.
No, I think you're probably right. But I think the other thing that these handicap spaces will do is also serve the general public when they're coming to visit this hall here, if they wanted to come in the front door, or if they were using the common. Now, I mean, if you just parked your car in here and went up, there's a handicapped accessible ramp there, and there's also one here. You could certainly get onto the sidewalk and make your way into the building, but that's assuming you don't need a handicap spot, if you don't need a tag, right? I mean, that would take care of folks that wear a cane, for example, and don't necessarily have an accessible tag on their car, but it's not, they're not real handicap spaces. We need some additional space in order to be able to do that. The question is, I mean, if we can do it without having to do ramps and rails, would folks like to do it? And if we do need ramps and rails, do folks still want to do it? I would just, that's the kind of, I just want to kind of set that circuit breaker up ahead of time so that when it comes back from the engineers in a couple of days, I won't need to try to get back in front of you all, because I've got a limited amount of time to get this all done.
Can I make a couple of comments? Because this is one of the things that I was sort of trying to really do. And that is, and there was a comment made that you couldn't have handicapped spaces in the right-hand side as you're going into the parking lot, because that would be that would not be safe for someone to either back in or drive in. And I can't understand that for the life of me, that, if you took a couple of the spaces, the first 1, 2, 3 spaces inside the parking lot you want to do on the right-hand side of the entrance that you're going into the parking lot, why can't you make the 3 spots there now? And then we will go back to what is out on the street right now, and then have your sidewalks go out from in front of the building so that they match where the sidewalk is now. So when you look at the big plan here, why can't you take a couple of those spaces, those 7 spaces there, and make 2 or 3 of those handicapped accessible? And then you're closer to the front of the building and you're closer to the sidewalk that they can go down and then get up the ramp that you have here and go. And you've even hatched the like drawing here to allow it as having a crosswalk.
But Wayne, it was your suggestion. You were asking about putting them out on the street.
No,
And I think
I
that's
was.
why
I
Phil
was,
and the engineers went through that, and we talked about it for a while before the meeting inside the auditorium.
And it was also discussed that we can't have the handicap crossing the lane of traffic there in the driveway.
But how come you can't have that? Where you have a crosswalk there?
Yeah, but
Isn't
the
someone
cross-
coming
but they have
down
to
the
walk-
sidewalk now?
They'd have to walk they'd have to walk down the driveway to get to the crosswalk.
Well, maybe you put a sidewalk or something
Yeah,
in
you
that
put a sidewalk.
radius.
We could,
Well, you wanted the sidewalk that is in front of the front of the new addition. I assume that you were gonna have a sidewalk along there on, where the fire hydrant was going to be and stuff like that, and match it out to the sidewalk, the other side of that hash mark. So at the top of the hash mark, if you had your 4-foot or 5-foot sidewalk going along there, it's picking up here, and so it connects with everything else you have. So, for instance, everybody on the right-hand side of the entrance, the new entrance, everybody along there, and if the parking lot's full and there's an event outside, how are they're going to be walking in the open space, and they got to get across the street, and that's not even the sidewalk. So there's no real way where people in the parking lot can get out to the common, get out to the front walkway and go in. So that was my first thought when we talked about the discussion, was to extend where you have the stairs going in the main entrance of the new addition. You'd have a sidewalk that would run along the curb until you get out to where the curve was, and you'd be on the sidewalk going that way. And that was separate from the ramp going up to this. You've got it so it's going to ramp down from the entrance down to the way you have it on that plan. Now, I'm changing my mind a little bit because I've never seen it. I'm going by what your people say, and that is have hash marks outside the left side of the doorway, have hash marks on the right-hand side, and then have a separate sidewalk after that. And so I couldn't see where you're going to go in 24 feet or so from the traveled way to put handicap spaces there. And you wanted room in the front, room in the back, room in both sides. I've never seen it, but if we can use a couple of those spaces inside where you've got that red line that turned around, you've almost picked up another, or you're calling that the
Sidewalk.
well, you have that right left of your arrow right now. What is that orange mark that you put there? What's that?
that's a potential sidewalk that would allow you to get out of your car and get onto the sidewalk, go across the crosswalk here,
Right.
and then you could get onto this walkway here and make your way up to the building.
Right. And then the second line you put, would that be the sidewalk going up that way?
That would be the sidewalk. That's actually, I covered on a different slide, but that would be the sidewalk that would allow you to get from the parking lot out to the main road if you were parking here to go to the common.
Yeah. Right.
This
So
wouldn't
that
be,
means
this wouldn't be an accessible route.
those two are terrific. Well, it's an accessible route if you turned the corner, you went down the sidewalk, got on your little thing and came back up again. Okay. But that would be for someone that would be going into the new addition versus it would be fine for the person going to the entrance of the old town hall, because you'd be on that sidewalk. And like I said, I'd give up the width that we had to do there, and then you'd probably end up with getting these 3 parking spaces back again for regular, for I don't know, I hate to say, like for non-handicapped people.
Yeah.
And so having a couple of handicap spots on the entrance going in, you'd be ended up going across, and you'd be on the sidewalk. You'd travel a little bit further, and then you get up to go up the ramp.
This area certainly seems easier to accommodate. If you
Yes.
think that, and I'm not all that worried about. It doesn't, I don't think it's going to allow us to eliminate these spaces. I'll have to double check. but to provide an additional 1 or 2 spaces over here. It's going to reduce the overall space count here, maybe by 1. I don't think that that is critical.
But-
We might be able to pick up the space by moving the curb over and not lose any.
Right, and that makes sense to me. I mean, you know, I was going to call earlier and say, I rescind, because of what it was going to take. I don't want, my ideas are not to increase something by $100,000 for Wayne. It was really trying to work on what would work with the constraints that we have. And I think and all along, the architect has not wanted to get, beyond that existing sidewalk and do anything. And because it can lead to something just like this. So I'm happy if this plan that you have with the new orange marks, and if the rest of the committee is in agreement, and be able to mark a couple of those 7 spaces as handicapped, and probably not lose any spaces. Now, I assume that space count of 90 or something is either the amount that we have today or the amount that is dictated by the design of the building. Because if it's the amount today, there aren't 90 people that work at town hall or that ever visit it on a single day without having a function, a meeting or something that generates more people. So having 2 extra spots for handicap might take 3 spots because of spacing. It just makes so much sense to me. Because when you go there today, nobody ever even uses those spaces. So, okay. Thank you.
This seems a lot easier to be able to accommodate it. And if the committee is interested in us doing that, we'll go ahead and have GGD make that change.
Okay. Can I get a second from anybody?
Well,
I think that makes sense.
I think there's also 61 spots if you count these.
Yeah.
I don't think there's 90.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
well,
I don't think there's 90. I see what you're saying about picking up a spot closest to the entrance, but that turn would get, if you're coming from the path of the one ways there, so between, so coming from the, I guess here's the east, and coming and taking a right into the driveway there, to get to that first parking spot, if we make it any closer to Highland Ave, that's a tight radius turn there that'd be rather difficult to negotiate.
The civil engineer will figure that out. They wouldn't recommend anything. It doesn't work if they needed to move it down by a space and extend the sidewalk over to here. I don't think it's going to make a big difference in the overall cost.
I mean, I don't know if this helps Wayne in the objective here of maybe putting some special signage at those signs to promote, it's not, they wouldn't maybe technically be a handicap spot, but promote those with mobility challenges in some way, if that's acceptable. I mean, you see them all over the grocery store with the expected mother parking, something of that nature.
and where are you looking for that? With those 3 spaces are out front?
Yeah, just, I mean, if it creates a whole nother set of issues, with moving the sidewalk, and just a thought. I mean,
yeah.
Because we're officially satisfying the requirement with the handicap spaces that we have in the back. What we're trying to do is go above and beyond the requirement here and provide an additional feature to accommodate the old town hall entrance, which would only be used at certain instances, and the town common.
Right, and again, of course, the churches and stuff like that too.
Sure.
So is the committee okay with progressing under this new thing and going forward?
Yes, I believe so. You got a couple of seconds there.
Okay, thank you.
So is that a yes for me? You want me to go ahead with that?
Yes, Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the other one was lighting, right? How do folks feel
Yeah.
about this light fixture? Now, it's public bid, right? And so we may specify this light fixture and then we'll end up with something similar. I mean, we might get the exact product we specified, but my guess is that we'll probably end up with something similar. And if it's horrible, we could certainly reject it. But this, in other words, we don't have to pick a make and model number at this point. If folks think that something like this will fit the bill, and we put 8 of those in this space, and then we could pick out the color. We'll have samples of what those colors look like. There's a variety of different glass shapes that can go on there, whether they're white or clear, that do kind of change the way the fixture looks. So
Would those be LED?
LED, yes.
I think 8 chandeliers might, without being in the space, I'm not sure, but it seems like that might be a lot. Right now, as you pointed out, there's only 4 overhead fixtures.
Right.
With the assumption you were going to add 4 more in the middle.
So what's the diameter, Phil? I mean, of that fixture, just to give folks an idea of size.
This is a little bit over 3 feet. So
Again,
it's not a monster, right? But it is bigger than the light fixture that's up there, which is probably about 18 inches across and is not pendant mounted, surface mounted.
well, your suggestion of the downlighting, however, especially if we're adding the acoustical panels and therefore are going to have some, right now we just have a flat ceiling. With the panels, we're going to have some sort of coffers like this Provincetown thing says. So if they can be camouflaged a little, maybe that gets us what we need with the existing fixtures that we have in there.
That is definitely an option, and it is going to be considerably cheaper, I would bet, than doing both.
I'd have to say I like the idea of the downlighting. I do like the chandeliers. They do become a problem trying to keep them clean or making them look nice. The downlighting would be a recessed lighting. I assume you wouldn't see any of the fixtures. That would be a hidden light that would make it look more wide open. Kind of like that idea.
Yeah, I'd second that too, and I would imagine that, obviously that I would say that the fixtures hanging down versus the downlights would be switched separately, and would they both be dimmable?
Yes, that's the plan.
Well, when you suggested that repurposing the existing fixtures would be significantly cheaper than going with new fixtures, do you have a ballpark for what that would be? Or is that, just sort of, I understand, we haven't priced any of this out, but like, are we talking like,
Right.
it's not like $100,000, right? So what's the,
No, I mean, each of these chandeliers, when you look them up online, they're going to be about $1,500 just to buy them. And then, you're going to pay an electrician an exorbitant amount of money in prevailing wages to hang them. And so a $1,500 light fixture, let's just say it's double with the labor, times 8, $24,000 worth of chandeliers in rough numbers. That's a guesstimate.
And we're also talking about moving the existing light fixtures, right? So we'd be moving those anyways, as we have a few that we'd be moving in to that space.
That's right, for the move. Yep.
And are those going to be, do those have to be retrofitted to accommodate LED lights? So
Yep.
there's some cost in renovating those as well?
Yes.
That's already in the numbers, Garrett,
Okay.
because that's in the scope right now.
So the difference would be what's in there versus this number to add the new ones, right? It would be the delta plus the downlights. and an LED downlight is not a lot of money, but they do need to wire them, and they'll have to fish it because you got an existing plaster ceiling there. Now, they'll take advantage of the fact that we've got acoustical panels there, and they can cut some holes and fish them, and then use the panels to hide the scars.
I mean, I think
patch
that,
it up.
the lighting in that space today, for lack of a better word, sucks. So I am in favor of doing anything we can to improve that lighting, and including the downlighting. The swapping out the light fixtures is an aesthetic point, more than anything else. I personally, I don't care for the existing light fixtures. They look small and they don't really fit in the space from my perspective, but that's just my perspective, not a lighting expert, not an architect, just not a design specialist, but just my perspective. I don't particularly care for them. So I would be in favor of swapping out with new light fixtures. I personally think that new light fixtures would, if we do have some intention of trying to use the space for other purposes, including, renting that space out for events, having nicer looking light fixtures might be a better selling point, make the space look more attractive for, potential customers. So that's my perspective. I would I'd swap them out. Whether or not we go with 6 or 8 light fixtures, I don't have a particularly strong feeling. I'd defer to people who have a better sense for how much lighting is necessary and appropriate for that space.
I have a friend who's a designer who does a lot with lighting, that I can get it if I can get her into the space in the next couple of days to answer this question quickly. Maybe Garrett, you can meet me over there and we can
Sure.
discuss, what the ceiling height would dictate and what would be required, whether it's 8 smaller chandeliers like this, or maybe 4 larger ones, or, what the appropriate thing to do that is realistically able to be maintained, that we don't need to lower and dust and things like that. And if that's not the answer, then, what are the other options for flush mounts?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about the chandeliers that's nice is that it does bring the lighting closer to the audience, right? So it's not just high above. So it makes the space feel a little bit more intimate, but that's, as I said, that's just my layman's perspective.
The other thing that I will point out is that a pendant light fixture will light the ceiling, which will make an impact on the way the space feels. Downlights alone won't do that. Your existing lights won't do that, but a hanging light fixture will throw light up at the ceiling, and it just gives the space a kind of a nicer glow. You get reflected light off the ceiling and so forth.
Okay, we'll circle back with you in short order, okay?
Yeah, Carolyn, I work from home, so I am available
Okay.
basically anytime.
I'm texting her right now to see if she has time tomorrow.
So can I then, in the assuming that's going to move forward, can I get kind of a temperature read on the rest of the committee on do you think you would like us to proceed with both downlighting and potentially new hanging lights as well, with a decision on what those lights look like?
I think that it depends on if we do big chandeliers, we might not need downlighting. I think the downlighting would be required if we keep the flush mounts that don't cast off a lot of light.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess I need my engineer to really tell me that one way or the other, based on something, right? I need to kind of get them rolling. Again, I've got a limited amount of time. If I roll with this and then we substitute a light afterwards, they could substitute that light into their photo calculations and tell us what the differences are, but at least I can get them moving. I mean, this is one of those things that we could we could specify these two light fixtures that we're suggesting, and then we could swap them with a change request at a later date if we needed to. So that I could move forward. I understand that your plan is to do this pretty quickly, but I need to get the engineers moving in order to be able to meet what I think we'll end up discussing in a few minutes here about our deadline.
Do you need something more from us today, Phil?
It sounds like folks are interested in one or both of those ideas, and but you also don't necessarily want to spend all the additional money if you don't need to. Does that sound about right?
I think it does.
So
Yeah.
if we could do it with just hanging fixtures that are good looking, and have a certain amount of output, and we don't need the downlights, we'll just do that, and then we'll plug in what that light fixture is once we figure out exactly what it is. If we do need the downlights and the hanging fixtures in order to give you the kind of output that we're talking about, not just enough light to walk around, but to be able to sit in a meeting and take notes,
Right,
then we'll end up doing both.
right. That sounds good.
My experience is that a lighting designer would want to have both.
I would
Because
expect,
that's all indirect. If you just have a chandelier shining up, it's all indirect light that has to bounce off the ceiling and go all the way down to the floor.
yes, yep, given the height of the room, I think you're right.
That's a lot. That's asking a lot.
Yep.
And
then-
probably wasting energy, in fact. So I would have both. That's my experience.
I bet that's exactly what GGD is going to say as well, that they'll end
No,
up.
the downlight's less expensive than the chandeliers. I mean, so we're talking about LED lights that would be installed there. So
Yes, but
I
this,
assume those, yeah.
yes, but this LED downlight is more expensive than one you might have in an office because, again, as Josiah said, it needs to punch down from quite a height, and
Mhm.
that light dissipates the further up you put it, right? So we're going to need a bigger light fixture, a more powerful light fixture to do that. So
Yeah.
that has a little bit of a cost to it, but they are cheaper.
And I think from this image here of the Provincetown, lighting the ceiling makes the space much more luminous and
Yeah.
higher feeling. And imagine if that were a dark ceiling, it would be a lot less pleasant.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I feel like we need to do what's right for the space. I mean, if we're looking at a $20 million project and we're talking about, saving $20,000 on lighting, it just seems like a short-sighted decision from my perspective. If you can, because that really would add to the usability of that space.
I'm with you. Got enough on that, Phil?
Yeah, I think I have the answers that I need.
Good.
Did I forget anything, Natalie? All right. Thank you.
So guys, that's what we had, and that's what Phil had for tonight. I mean, I think you can finally feel the snowballs are rolling. We are moving. We are in the process of pre-qualification. We received the responses back. We unfortunately only got one interested fire protection firm and one interested elevator firm. Elevator, not surprised, happens all the time. Fire protection, we belts and suspenders advertised again. Basically, we have guidance from the Attorney General that will allow us to go non-trade with that, meaning we can open it up because of only one response, because it's CM at risk. We need to confirm this, but give it to the CM to go and find, to bring firms in themselves to do it. Because we only have that one number, but we need to confirm that. But 5 or 6 electricians, 5 or 6 HVAC, 5 or 6 plumbers. So we got good coverage on the rest of the scopes, and we're reviewing those now and checking references and whatnot. So Phil and Mark will be in touch, because we're going to need to have a meeting at some point in the very near future to kind of update on that stuff. And we need Commodore involved too. Commodore this week, huge vacation week for them, and their estimator has been answering questions while he's been on vacation. He's been wonderful. So happy to report that. So I guess the only other thing we have is to discuss is, I guess, next week's meeting with the select board. I know that Mark had shared with me a outline of a presentation. Clearly, now that we have some working numbers, we're going to go ahead and work to put those things, on the slides. I'll work with Michelle to get her whatever she wants to put in the packet as far as the actual estimates. I mean, obviously the estimate itself is 39 pages, and then the renovation estimate, a couple pages on top of that. I'll work with her to make sure that stuff gets in there. Mark, who's taking the lead on the slides themselves?
Mark is
Thanks, Phil.
happy to help.
So I'll work with you. We'll get that information boiled down. Again, folks, the same way that, it's not my thought to go into the select board with a 40-line budget. It's going to be the boiled down 7 lines that you've seen each time. People have questions. We certainly have the backup and can get into the nitty-gritty. But we're going to keep it at the higher level breakdown of costs.
We're going to be using the same presentation for advisory. Is that meeting still on for the Wednesday?
Correct. Rinse and repeat.
And
Right.
we'll likely be using the same one for CPC on March 6th, I believe is the date they have us slated for.
That's correct.
Yeah, what we'll do though, Michelle, is we'll have a same presentation, but an additional page of detail showing the breakout, because I do think there are some site costs and things that we can include in that column that we just haven't had time to break out because they're 2 square foot in nature. So we'll make sure that we can pull some, I need to talk to the estimator when he gets back from vacation, include a couple more details. That way that number is fully baked. The 17.8 isn't going to change. It's just how we break it out for, we may add some site costs to the CPC fund, the CPC calc.
Okay.
Anything else on the presentation?
Select board will be in person, I presume.
Select
Michelle?
board is in person. However, they're forecasting a snowstorm for Tuesday. So it may go Zoom. We just have to watch the skies and see what happens.
Okay, and advisory we did confirm advisory the following day will be remote.
Do we have times for where we are in the both of the agendas for those, Michelle? Just ballpark.
I can send you on select board. I believe we are on at 7:50.
Okay.
And advisory, I'm not sure, but I'll look those up and send you both agendas.
Okay. Sounds good.
And select board meeting, is that going to be held at Old Town Hall?
Yes, the select board meeting is going to be in the auditorium of Town Hall.
So bring your own flashlight.
Yes.
Make sure
Or
you plug
Phil,
in the
if you
Home
could
Depot
arrive
light.
early to plug in the lights for us, that'd be great.
I am going to wait till it gets very dark before I plug that sucker in.
Almost like we planned it.
Well, it might be broken. I don't know. Good. That's a great plan.
All right, guys. What we'll do is, Phil, if you could send me your presentation from tonight, and I will take the estimates, I'll put them in a file share, and I'll blind copy the committee, just so that you all have it.
You got it. I'm writing that email right now, and I'm also going to attach the folding stair that we talked about. It's a heavy duty, it's aluminum. It's not a little wooden residential thing. I'm gonna put a cut on there so that folks can see that as well. I didn't get a chance to put it into the slideshow, but I'll attach it to this email.
Great.
You set, John?
Good to go.
Other thing we have on our next topic is relocation. Is that just our board or do we need others here, Michelle?
So I can speak to it fairly quickly, and I think it's good for everybody to hear. So we have that number of $200,000 in the estimate. I have reached out to a property owner in Cohasset to find out if we lease square footage that fits everybody in town hall, what the cost would be. They estimated at $88 a square foot, and that would include build out. So that would be over $1 million for us to temporarily relocate. So since getting that number, we have started to look at like an emergency plan. What would we do in the event of town hall being closed? Well, we would move resources to other buildings. So right now we have a plan of I guess reappropriating a building, reappropriating the use of a town building from much of our staff, renting a couple of trailers to put on town land, and moving all of our staff over that way. Therefore, we can stay within that $200,000 number and really not have to rely on anyone other than the town in the event that the project goes longer or shorter.
Wow, that's a lot of money. $1 million. Any questions on that, anybody? I think it's a situation where when we get to that point, we have to do what we have to do. Hopefully we will get to that point.
Yeah, right, and we're going, hopefully this plays out because we're going with the 200, and that's the number that's been in there. I think when we originally, started putting a budget together, years ago at this point, there was a talk of, town buildings, there was a talk of trailers, it was a much smaller, situation. So, I mean, I'm glad Michelle asked the question. I'm glad we got the answer. And I hope that this plan works out because clearly the commercial market has changed a little bit, and that's just a gross number. That's just that's not in the budget right now. That's another 800 grand that would go on here, and that's just money. It's money out the window, and it's a much better sell, I think, if you're using your own space.
Any other comments on relocation? Anything else we need to go over tonight? Anything we missed? No,
I don't think so.
I think we, all right, we should be good. So if we're set, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
John, Steve, thank you very much, and Phil for all this. Appreciate it. Be in touch.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank
Okay.
you. Good night.
Aye.